When we're finished making our adjustments in Camera Raw, we have a number of different options to either apply those adjustments and open the document into Photoshop or save and convert the image into another file format. Let's take a look at those options. I'm going to use Command R on Mac, Control R on Windows to open this image into Camera Raw. If we choose to open the file into Photoshop, before we just click open, we'll want to check our workspace settings. Here I can choose my color space and my bit depth. And as we covered in the previous digital imaging chapter, I'm going to leave this to Adobe RGB and set it to 16-bit. If I know that I need to resize my image, I can go ahead and enable this here. Two of the most popular options are probably width and height, and then either the long or short side. So you should know that when you define the width and height, you're basically defining a box. So in this case, it would be 1,000 pixels wide by 1,000 pixels high. But Camera Raw isn't going to squish your image into a square. It's going to make it as large as possible within that box. So in this case, it would be 1,000 pixels wide by only 667 pixels high. You'll also want to set your resolution if this is going to be printed. You can choose to sharpen for either the screen, glossy, or matte paper. However, I would just say that if you're going to take the image into Photoshop and do more manipulations like retouching the image, well, sharpening adds contrast to edges. And so if you're going to further enhance that in Photoshop, you might actually be compounding those edges and you may see some artifacting. So I would leave this off if you're going to continue to retouch in Photoshop. You can also set the preference to open in Photoshop as a smart object. That just changes the default option down here in the lower right. We're going to be talking more about smart objects, but the benefit is that if you select this, Camera Raw will hand off a copy of the raw file to Photoshop as raw data and not as a pixel-based document. For now, I'll leave that off. And then one other note about resizing your images. I typically don't resize my image unless I know that exact size that I need to go to, because it gives me a little bit more flexibility to have the full resolution image. And if I know that I am going to need to resize the image larger, then I will resize it using the image size here before going into Photoshop. All right, for now, I'll click OK to apply that. And then let's click the Open button. We can see that the image is opened into Photoshop where we could continue editing. For now, I'll just choose File and then Save As. We can save this to our computer into the same folder as a Photoshop document. I'll just append it here with an underscore ME for master edited and save it as a Photoshop document. Then I can close this, and when we return to Bridge, we can see the original DNG and then the PSD file. All right, let's return to Camera Raw for one moment. If we make all of our edits and we don't need to go to Photoshop for any further editing, or if we just need to quickly save out a version of an image, perhaps to send to a client, we can use the Convert and Save options. We can choose to save the file in the same location or go to a new location, in which case we could select the folder here. We can choose to rename the file. In this case, let's imagine that I need an image that's 1,000 pixels across as a JPEG so someone can place it on the web. So I would add or append to the file name. I might put either underscore LR for low res, or I might be more specific and put 1,000 px. I'll save it as JPEG, but there are a number of different formats you can choose from. I'll choose to include my copyright and contact information, set the quality to the maximum, which is 10 to 12. I'd want to convert it to sRGB since it's going to be put on the web, and I only have the option of 8 bits because we're saving it as a JPEG. Then I would need to resize to fit. In this case, I could say the long side needs to be 1,000 pixels, and because it's going on screen, it really doesn't matter what the resolution would be. Because this is the final image, I wouldn't be editing it anymore in Photoshop. I'll go ahead and enable the Sharpen 4 and set that to screen. Then I'll go ahead and choose Save. We can click Done. And when we return to Bridge, we can see there's that 1000 pixel JPEG file that we exported or saved from Camera Raw. So the next time you're done editing your images in Camera Raw, be sure to set the workflow settings before you open your image into Photoshop, or use the Convert and Save options before saving out a derivative of your original.